Today I'm going to talk about money meets AI, tools, trends, and how everyday consumers are using AI to manage their money. First, just by show of hands, who's used any AI tools before? Okay, and I know we have a lot of creators here. How about people who've used AI tools for different creative tasks, writing, editing, creating any kind of content? Okay, and has anyone used AI to manage their own personal money? All right, so we have a few people. So I'm Jeffrey Trull. I'm a trained civil and environmental engineer. I have 2 degrees, which I do nothing with now, but it led me onto this very interesting path where I'm a content marketing consultant now. I've been doing that for about 13 years. I help clients get more traffic to their website, mostly through blog content, but through other means as well. And I would consider myself a shortcut enthusiast. I like to optimize. I like to do things the easy way, right? I'm a little bit lazy, so that makes me really excited to use AI to figure out how can I work less, how can I do things easier. And about 5 months ago, I started a weekly newsletter called Money Meets AI. And the goal of the newsletter is to help everyday people with how to use AI to manage their money, save more, spend less, and do it in like an easy, approachable format. And in the way I started that, I'll tell you a little bit about my money and AI journey. So this year I got married, but before we got married, we had to figure out how are we going to combine finances. And I'm the money nerd in the family. I'm the one who likes to do the budgets, have all the apps, things like that. And my wife is not as into it to me. Very smart person, but not someone who likes to manage money and get into all those details. So we were just kind of putting our heads together, thinking about like, how can we make this easier? And I was like, why don't I just, see what AI can do for me, see what ChatGPT can help with this, question that I have. And just to do a hypothetical example, I was like, just build me a budget, $5,000 in income, $1,800 in rent, and then $500 a month in groceries. And in a few seconds, ChatGPT spit out this nice little spreadsheet. It has some other suggested expenses and things like that, and just kind of gives me like a nice idea, right, with very little effort. I didn't have to build a budget from scratch or go out there and look for templates that might work, and I just kind of wanted a quick and easy answer, and this worked perfectly for what I was trying to do. And so that had me thinking, like, if AI can build me a simple budget in seconds, what can it do for our money? And I thought about it some more, and I think what's really great about it is it really simplifies the hardest parts of dealing with personal finances. It gives me clear answers fast. There's no digging through endless articles to try to figure out, is this applicable to me? Can something help me here? And then once I find it, like, how do I apply it to my own life? And it gives me personalized suggestions, so it's not just a generic template, but it's really tailored to me, right? Just like the last example, that's the budget I wanted. It gave it to me right on the spot. And there's also instant structure. So I'm not just staring at a blank page being like, how do I start to think about this? Or how do I build this from scratch, which is, pretty annoying most of the time. Instead, it just gives me kind of what I need and just through a simple conversation. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So just to lay out the roadmap, first we're going to talk about some trends, what people are using AI for, how they're using it to manage their money, what tools are popular, that kind of stuff. Then we're going to talk about what's working well with AI and money, where I think tools are helpful right now and what some of my favorites are. And then we'll talk about what's not working so well, which there are a lot of things that still don't work great with AI and money, and it might surprise you. And we'll end with some key takeaways. Okay, so let's jump into the trends. First off, large language models, or LLMs, you've probably heard of. Just for some background if you haven't, they process, understand, and generate human-like text. They learn patterns from vast data sets of code. So they're generally not thinking on their own. They're learning the patterns that people use and the words you put together and things like that to generate the output they give to you. And you can use it for all sorts of tasks: content creation, translation, questions, summarization. You've probably seen a wide array of applications. And there are many popular LLMs that are out there today. ChatGPT, which I've already mentioned, is by far the most popular. So that's the big area at the bottom. That's the lightest blue color. Represents about 80% market share of all LLMs, LLM usage today. That's followed by Microsoft Copilot, it's about 10%, Perplexity at 6%, and then Google Gemini and Claude are less, and then there's some smaller ones as well. So largely dominated by ChatGPT right now. Let's jump into ChatGPT a little bit in detail. You probably know, like, all right, a ton of people are using ChatGPT. Everyone's talking about it, right? How many people are actually using it these days? So here's a recent tweet from Nick Turley, August 2025. Nick's the head of ChatGPT for OpenAI. And he said in August that ChatGPT hit 700 million weekly active users. It's a lot, right? It's almost nearing a billion, but it's 4 times how many there were in August 2024. So it's still growing pretty rapidly. So you may be wondering, like, how does that compare? We've heard a lot about, Google's going down, right? ChatGPT is taking over. Google's going to be, behind AI pretty soon, right? It turns out right now it's not really even close to the case, which is interesting to see. SparkToro put this chart together, and you can see the trend line here at the bottom. The pink is AI usage, devices in the US who use an AI tool at least once a month. You can see it's grown pretty steadily in the last two and a half years, pretty close to 40% as of June 2025. But the blue bar at the top is Google users, and unsurprisingly, 95 to 98% of devices are accessing Google at least once a month. So there's still a pretty wide gap in terms of usage here, and there's a lot of room for AI to grow. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit more to the money aspect. And what tasks are people using AI to deal with their personal finances? And this is from an Ipsos BMO survey in 2024 that found 37% of Americans are now using AI tools to help manage their finances, including 61% of Gen Z. And they're doing it for a pretty wide variety of tasks, around 50% in all these categories, but just to learn about personal finance, creating budgets, discovering investment strategies, savings goals, drafting financial plans. So a pretty wide array of things that people are using AI for now. And then there's the question of, like, what are people comfortable using AI for? So, you might imagine, like, there's a lot of, even with your money, there's a lot of kind of low risk type things that you can do with AI, and then there's some higher risk things you might not want to use or trust AI for. So this TD Bank survey found, asked what people were comfortable with using AI, and they found the things that are more in, like, in the hundreds of dollars, like budgeting, savings goals, or maybe thousands. About 60% of people are comfortable using AI for that. But when you get to the kind of higher stakes, where you're talking tens, hundreds, millions of dollars, retirement planning and investing, fewer people were comfortable, less than half in their survey. But that's still a pretty big chunk of people, right? Like 44 to 48%. A lot of people are comfortable already, and I just expect that number to keep growing. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of the tech side of things, the fintech and all that, and think about where they're at with AI. And you've probably noticed that a lot of apps in general say they're AI powered now, right? It's a huge marketing push to be AI. It's the cool thing to do. Everybody wants to use AI and incorporate it, right? But the reality is that there's not a ton of AI being used yet, at least in my research and what I've seen. And a lot of the tools still rely on traditional automation, rules-based logic. It's not machine learning. It's kind of the old technology, if you will, or technology that's been around for years. An example of this might be a credit card app that says it'll predict your spending, right? But just showing averages, it's just running some sort of automation in the background to make these estimates. It's not using AI necessarily. Or it could be a budgeting app that says it's labeling itself AI without any sort of real machine learning built into it as well. So how does this break down in terms of the pros and cons for consumers and how they use AI to manage their money? So the great parts, I think, are that AI is really fast. You can get answers super quick, and it's really simple to use. There's not much of a learning curve for people. They can open up the app, they can ask a question, similar to how they would in Google, maybe even easier because it's more conversational. And it's free or low cost. Pretty much all the LLMs have free versions that people can use, or you can upgrade to a premium version that's a little more powerful for $20 a month or something like that. But the cons are you have to deal with things like hallucinations in AI tools, which I'll talk about in a minute. Privacy concerns, so who's seeing what you enter into AI? Is it secure? Is someone reading your information, or big tech companies taking that and selling that, or doing other things with your data? Is it safe to put your information in? That's a big concern. And then lack of accountability. So, who's behind AI? Well, ultimately, no one really is behind it, not a single person or someone that you can point to and say, hey, your advice cost me $10,000. Like, what the heck? And there's no one you can really blame for that. It's just a piece of technology. So these are the downsides of AI currently. But regardless of the pros and cons, it's pretty clear that AI is becoming a huge part of everyday money management. So let's talk a little bit about what's working in AI, tools that I think are worth exploring and checking out, and how that's helping people manage their money. Okay, so how do I define what's working in AI and money? First, I think reduces friction, right? It makes it easier to start something, easy to do a task or just get going, and it provides personalized answers. So it's not just spitting out kind of canned responses or something like that. It's actually looking at your data and providing information based on your personal situation rather than just some boilerplate answers. It adds some sort of convenience, so it's easy to use, or it gives you something faster, easier, better than you might otherwise find by doing a Google search or something, or using a non-AI app. And it's novel. It's doing something new in a better way. It has some advantage to it over traditional apps or other tech. So I'm just going to go through 7 examples here that I think are doing a pretty good job of using AI to help people with money. And the first is Monarch Money has an AI assistant. It's currently in beta. Basically, what you can do is you can ask Monarch's AI assistant anything you want about money and your budget. And it lets people query their own data sets based on what you've input into Monarch. So for example, you could say, how much I spent on coffee last month, and their AI assistant will just pull it up for you. And you can ask more complex things too, like how much did I spend on groceries, or how's my net worth changed over the last 2 years? So it'll let you look back without having to click through their data or set up filters and do other sorts of analysis. It makes things a little bit easier. The next one is a budgeting app called Copilot Money, not to be confused with Microsoft Copilot, different thing. And Copilot helps you categorize transactions and spot overspending patterns to help users better manage their finances. And it can automatically spot these patterns and help you correct them, or do other sorts of analysis that will help you better budget and save your money. This is just a preview of how that app looks. The next one is not strictly personal finance, but definitely very money related. It's Amazon's Rufus AI. So this is built into the Amazon app and Amazon website. And Rufus lets you compare prices, get product recommendations, helps you make purchasing decisions within the Amazon platform. So for example, you can ask it questions like, what's the difference between this wood-fired and gas-fired pizza oven? And it'll give you an analysis similar to like what ChatGPT would do, and kind of help you compare the pros and cons of your situation. And another way that I really like Rufus is it lets you look at price history for any Amazon product. So you can look back 90 days and say it's Prime Day. You can look and see, like, is this actually a good sale? Is this item actually as cheap as they're saying it is relative to what it was before, or is it just kind of the same price it has been? So Rufus will help with that too. Another popular one you may have seen is Cleo. So Cleo is a very AI-forward app. It's a chat bot that connects to your bank accounts. It'll analyze your spending, and then you can basically have a conversation with Cleo about your spending. They call it the world's first AI financial assistant. And it's known for being pretty snarky or kind of having like a playful personality as it kind of takes some of the boring stuff out of finance, right? So it's like, in this case, it's like, looks like you finally got your life together. No 2 a.m. takeout for you. So they're trying to appeal to people that maybe don't want to like take their finances too seriously and want to make it a little more fun. The next one is called Opportune, and this will help you automate your savings. So what it does is it learns your spending patterns and the patterns of when your money comes into your accounts, and it automatically shifts your funds into savings. So the idea is to really help you automate savings, make sure you're saving at the right time, maybe when you have more money after receiving a paycheck or something like that. And it's supposed to make the process really seamless for you. So just pop up and say like, you saved $11.63 today. And the idea is it does it just without you even needing to notice or really think about it or say like, I should put $50 in my savings account today. And another thing I thought was interesting too is that they use AI for some of their background tasks here. So this isn't necessarily consumer facing or user facing, but they have like loan applications built in that they do like loan approval based on AI in their background. So many tools use AI, even though they're not directly something the user interacts with. Another one you probably heard of, Rocket Money, used to be called Trull, and uses AI to flag charges you've forgotten about, recurring monthly charges and subscriptions, and help you cancel them. It gives you the option right in the app to do it. They'll assist you. And this one solves a real everyday pain point, right? No one wants to be throwing money away every month on subscriptions they don't use. So it's really, really helpful in terms of finding those kind of things that are hard to spot in your everyday budget and making sure that you are able to cancel them if you need to. Finally, as far as apps, Credit Karma. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Credit Karma here. It's a huge app for credits, credit scores, credit cards, all things credit related. And they have an AI tool that helps users understand their credit scores and take small actionable steps to build their credit. And basically you can ask their AI-driven chat tool anything you want about your credit. What's wrong? Why isn't your credit score higher? How do you improve it? Their example is, what credit card works best for me based on my spending. So it'll help make recommendations based on that. So these are all great apps, but I want to get to my favorite tool, which you might already have guessed is ChatGPT. It's my favorite for managing your money and getting answers to your financial questions. And I think there's some great qualities about ChatGPT that I really like over some of the other options that I just showed you. The first, it's really straightforward. Again, it's pretty easy to use. It has a really small learning curve. You can pretty much jump right in and start using it right away without any sort of training. It's really versatile. So a lot of apps, you're limited to the functionality of the app or the type of personal financial situation it helps out with, but ChatGPT can help with pretty much anything you can imagine. And again, it's free or low cost. You can access it free if you want, or you can pay a small amount of money for a premium subscription for a more powerful version. So let's talk a little about some of my favorite use case examples, and I've featured some of these in my Money Needs AI newsletter. The first is picking a credit card. This is a task that I find really tedious, right? I'm a travel hacker type person. I love getting points and flying on points and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to read dozens of articles every week and find all the best deals or try to figure out, should I apply for card A or card B? So I find ChatGPT really useful for these kinds of conversations to narrow things down. So you could say something like, I spend $2,000 a month on groceries and travel. Which card's the best for me? Or, compare Sapphire Preferred versus Amex Gold. I fly twice a year and I eat out every week. You can ask these types of questions and ChatGPT will have a conversation with you to kind of narrow down your best options. Another is growing your career, and this is another one I had fun with lately, is you can upload your resume to ChatGPT and ask it, which career fields am I best suited for? Or based on my background in marketing, what growing industries could I pivot into in the next 5 years? You probably want to know too if, is AI going to replace me? You don't want to enter the wrong career or something like that at this point. So it's really helpful at giving you some ideas and kind of doing that research for you, where it might otherwise take a lot of Googling to kind of get to the bottom of it. And then seeking money coaching is another way. I think ChatGPT is great. It's very conversational. So you can say, explain my credit score like I'm a beginner. What's good, what's bad? What should I focus on first? Or even something as general as, I'm thinking of buying a new car. Is that a good idea for me right now? And it'll ask you a lot of follow-up questions, have some things to consider. And again, just really useful in giving you kind of a more customized answer. Okay, so we covered what's working with AI. Now let's jump into what doesn't work so well and where AI falls short. So the first big area is outdated knowledge. So all these LLMs, or large language models, are based off of data that are added to its database, but they all have a cutoff date. So old data gets baked in. So for example, GPT-5, which just came out a few weeks ago, has a cutoff date of October 2024. So based on the answers it will give you without browsing, it's all based on stuff that's older than that. And the problem with that is things like laws or information or news, they all change faster than these models update. So they might not always give you the newest information. Now you're probably saying, well, you can just use the browser function, right? Search the web. Sure, you can do that, and that can help, but you still have to be careful because that depends on the sites it's browsing having up-to-date information, right? If there's not up-to-date information on those sites, it can't give you an accurate answer or might not know that something is outdated. And I'll give you just a really good example here where AI falls short. Student loan advice. So this is Travis. He's right over there. He's the founder of Student Loan Planner. And Student Loan Planner does student loan consults with financial planners. And so we've been hearing a lot lately. Travis is like, a lot of people are just saying, like, why would I hire a student loan planner now? I can just go on ChatGPT and get a student loan plan for free, right? I can just type in, how should I pay off my student loans? What's the best student loan plan for me? Makes sense, right? Like the information's theoretically all out there on the internet. Why can't ChatGPT just do it for free? Why would I pay somebody? So Travis tried this a few weeks ago, and with ChatGPT, just asking some basic questions that a student loan planner consultant would normally go through with a client. And I gotta say the results were pretty disastrous in terms of what ChatGPT recommended to Travis when he asked these questions. First, it recommended repayment plans that no longer exist. So the One Big Beautiful Bill just came out in July, made some big changes to student loans. Different repayment plans are going away, new payment plan coming online. It recommended the Save plan, which you can't enroll in anymore. So big problem number one right there for our ChatGPT answer. The next is it gave advice past applicable legal deadlines. So it actually recommended doing something in July 2025 when Travis was having this conversation in August. So it wasn't even possible unless you can time travel. But it gave advice that wasn't even possible in the present day. Third, it made other suggestions that were legally possible. It said it had advice about filing a tax extension in a way that's just not allowed. So completely wrong again. And then worst of all, it miscalculated someone's taxes by about $40,000, which would be a pretty big problem for somebody, pretty costly one. I think they probably would have wished they just paid a few $100s for the student loan consult rather than $40,000 to the IRS or however that worked out. So based on this analysis, would you trust ChatGPT to run your student loan repayment strategy? I don't think I would. I'd be pretty nervous about it. So that's one major problem with ChatGPT that you really have to watch out for. The next one is these LLM models are really bad at math sometimes, and that kind of ties in with the last example a little bit, but they're actually not calculators on their own. A lot of people, I think, believe that they can just do calculations like a regular calculator would. And that's really just not how they're programmed to work. They actually are pattern recognizers, and their output depends on patterns and what it thinks the right pattern of words is to solve the person's problem or answer the person's prompt. So historically, they're not great at dealing with math. Now they're getting better at this. They're able to, say, run Python code and do other sorts of math computation live within the software. But again, it's still an area where I don't think I would trust it, at least without some other testing. For example, I don't know if I'd want it to run my retirement strategy, by itself. I think I'd rather trust somebody else that's an expert, a CFP, someone else to do this rather than relying on ChatGPT for such a crucial calculation. Okay, let's talk about hallucinations. So hallucinations are an interesting phenomenon in AI where basically it makes up answers and doesn't really give any indication that it's doing so. So it'll say something like it's a fact and like it knows it to be true, but the reality is it's not based off of any information whatsoever. And this is a very prevalent problem in LLMs. All the open AI and all the LLM makers are all aware of it. They're not totally sure how to solve it. It's so bad that New York Times did a whole feature article on it in May 2025. And they actually noticed that it was getting worse with newer models of AI, not better, which is the most alarming part. You'd assume they're solving this problem, but it turns out it's a lot harder to do than they anticipated. And they recently released some data on GPT-5 that they said is an improvement. And you can see in the error rate, it's GPT-5 in the left column. It's a 26% error rate in their testing. No, this is just for their testing. This is not across everybody's queries. So not 1 in 4 of your queries are wrong. This is just their test to stress test it. But still, 26%, that's pretty high. It's better than it was at 75, but it's not something I'd feel like super confident about. So you really got to be careful about hallucinations and making sure AI isn't just making up some answer. And then finally, where it falls short, I think underutilized potential is what I'd call it. And you may have gotten this sense a little bit earlier when I talked about some of the apps, but I think the functionality is pretty basic right now in a lot of the financial tools that I highlighted and other ones that are out there. They're talking a pretty big AI game, but I think they're using pretty basic AI functionality. A lot of it relies on chatbots, which are really just the ChatGPT API that's running within the tool. Or they're doing things that are a little basic categorization of transactions and stuff like that. That's really, it's nice, but it's not going to like revolutionize your finances, right? I also think some of their paid tools just have a limited advantage. There are several paid apps and things like that are charging like pretty hefty annual fees, $100 a year or more. And I'm not really sure that's worth it for some of these tools. I think some are great, some aren't. And they're still relying on old school algorithms for the majority of their apps, right? They might have AI features in them, but it's still the same technology. It's just marketed a little different in some cases. So that's, as we talked about earlier, AI washing. So don't get me wrong, I love a lot of financial apps. I use a ton of them. I think they're super great. They're super handy. They automate a lot of things. They're really useful, but just a lot of them aren't AI yet. So don't buy into all the marketing. Just use tools you like, whether it's AI or not. And finally, I'll leave you some takeaways here as far as where I think AI is going and what the future looks like. So one of the key takeaways, AI reduces friction, right? It does help us do certain financial tasks. It makes money tasks faster and less intimidating. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people adopting them. It's just easy to pop open AI and ask your question compared to Googling something. It's also easier than hiring a CFP or hiring a financial planner. You can just ask it anytime you want. And AI is really great as like a first draft creator, right? It can do some of the tasks we don't like so much that are laborious or boring or just tedious tasks. So it really helps with those parts. AI is great at personalizing advice. we're seeing it really adapt to people's money situation, not give generic rules and things like that. Lessons we might learn from kind of everyday articles or things like that. So it's a major bonus over some of the articles that are more one-size-fits-all type content. And another lesson is that human judgment still matters. So AI is really best when it's used as a partner, not as a replacement for humans. We still really need experts for financial advice, for advisement, things like that. We need people who can apply logic or tools that can really help us in a way that aren't necessarily going to be susceptible to things like hallucination or outdated information and all that. So make sure to consult with experts, or at the very least ask AI for sources or how it arrived at something to help find some of these issues that I talked about. So that brings me to the final point. Will AI replace human-related content, human-created content, which I'm sure a lot of us here are wondering and think about a lot. I know I do. And I really don't see it happening just yet. I think it's going to continue to replace some types of content, but the reality is we still need human expertise and reasoning. And don't forget that AI learns from us. I think that's pretty uncomfortable for a lot of us, and I don't love the idea of that. I'm definitely not here to say that's okay or anything like that, but the reality is it is happening, right? And it also doesn't learn well. We've learned it does have a lot of issues with its thinking and how its output. Excuse me. And its output just not being accurate. But I think you can see that it's improving really fast, and its adoption is increasing all the time. And even though it remains an imperfect tool. So the best approach from my perspective, as far as AI and how it will change money going forward, is just stay informed. Stay on top of the trends. Things change all the time. Just be aware of what's going on. But stay skeptical too. Don't just take everything at face value. Definitely ask questions about it. And definitely stay curious. Make sure that you're always looking. Excuse me. Always looking to see what's changing and why is that happening. And as far as staying curious goes, that's what I'll continue to do on Money Meets AI. I publish my weekly newsletter every Wednesday with different tips on how to use AI to manage your money. And if you scan this QR code to go to tinyurl.com/MMAI FinCon, you can get my 5 most popular AI prompts and my weekly newsletter. And I'm happy to take some questions. Thank you.